All right, welcome back to Locked in My Office. I'm Dr. Shane Oberliner, and in this episode, we're going to be talking with Jim Grider. He is a counselor at Michigan Tech, and he's got all sorts of interesting insights on the mental health of students at Tech, but also insights on music and just being a good person. I also have a special guest host. We brought Jared Wolfe back, and he's always got interesting insights to add. So it's a really fun conversation. And also I want to add before we get into the conversation that this is our last episode for the season, or I suppose rather the semester. And it would really be helpful if you could just give us some feedback. You can email limo@mtu.edu with your feedback, thoughts, either kind or unkind, because we really want to make this a podcast that people want to listen to. This first semester was a little bit experimental, and so I suspect next semester I'm going to solidify a little bit more on how this podcast operates. But I've had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope you've had fun listening. So anyways, the last thing is you can always recommend new guests at oberloier.com/limo, so oberloier.com/limo. You can recommend guests, and next semester I'm going to start reaching out to them and seeing if I can get them on the show. So if you could do that, that would also be great. And thanks for listening, and hope you enjoy. All right, guys. So we've got a returning guest / co-host or whatever. We've got Dr. Jared Wolfe here. Hey, Jared.
Hey, Shane.
Yeah. And then our guest today, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Jim Grider. I'm a clinical counselor here at Michigan Tech.
Could you tell Jared how you became a meme? Because he might not be familiar with how you became a meme.
All right, so it was the Center for Mental Health and Well-Being, and we were given the briefing to all the freshmen during orientation week. And my supervisor, Carrie Gilbertson, I'm Carrie Gilbertson, I'm Assistant Director of the Center for Mental Health and Well-Being, and then she points at me and I said, I'm Jim. And everyone erupted, and there was like the wave going back and forth, and they're hooting and hollering. I'm not kidding. Hooting and hollering and everything, and I'm like, what is going on here? So I played it up a little bit. The first time I was like, yeah, okay, doing this and then this and then that. And then the second group of freshmen come in, and the exact same thing happened. I have no idea how, who, what, where, why, when. I finished with that second one. I already had an email saying, hey, can I use your name on a shirt? I was like, sure. Well, he put, I'm Jim. And so I ordered one. And but then the next morning I wake up, and my daughter has like this series of Snapchats that are like, make Jim the dean of Michigan Tech, and all these, where did Jim go, all this stuff. And my daughter's like, you're blowing up, Dad. And she's down in Central Illinois, but she's got a lot of friends that go to Tech. And so then I walk through campus, people are stopping, take selfies with me and stuff. They ask for my autograph, and all of a sudden it just kind of kept going. And so I'm a meme here at Michigan Tech. So
yeah, I didn't know who you were. I just knew like Sarah had said so. So my wife Sarah has a dad with a beard, and she's at one point she said, because you work on the same floor as her.
Yeah. She watches me go to the bathroom. I mean walk into the. That's where her window is. Yeah. Check mark.
But I remember she said, yeah, there's like a guy that kind of looks like my dad, but much more well-dressed. And so I knew that you existed. And then the next I like heard of your existence was like the meme explosion. Like I saw like all these memes. I'm like, who the hell is this bearded guy? It was you.
How does it feel to be a meme?
Okay, so walked into the hockey game on Friday, and I'm just walking up, and all the students are still there waiting to get their free ticket to go in, and they're like, Jim, and I'm high-fiving, going through the line. They start chanting, Jim, 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 Jim. And I'm saying, because we were playing Northern, I'm like, NMU, where the N stands for knowledge. And get into the game, and I'm in the front row. Camera goes on me. I'm on a big screen, student section, Jim, Jim. Apparently I was on TV6 too, because they hopped in on the feed, and my daughter sending me pictures. Dad, you're on TV6. I'm like, oh man. But so it's still going on. I don't know what to do. Maybe it'll die down over Christmas. That'd be cool. But
do you feel a responsibility to not cut your beard now?
I never will cut my beard. Last time I shaved was March of 2016. But I get it trimmed about every 3 weeks because I don't want that unruly look. But I just won a contest for best groomed beard in the Upper Peninsula. So
Wow,
through the
nice.
Man Cave, they have. Here I am. I better get free haircuts and stuff, but they have one in Marquette, one in Iron Mountain, one in Escanaba, and I won like $50 worth of beard goop and all kinds of stuff. So
Did you like pretty it up any further for like the contest?
I got
or-
second place in the mustache competition, but I just took a picture right after I had it cut and groomed and everything, and someone submitted it for me actually. Hey Jim, let me get a picture of it. So I sent it, and I beat I actually got the freshman class involved in voting for me, so I beat the next closest guy
You
by
so you
100 votes. I
leveraged
did,
the
I did.
memedom, yeah.
I won by over 100 votes. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I'll come into class on Monday because I was teaching a UN 1000 course, and they were like, "Hey Jim, you were up in Calumet this weekend at Youp Fest, and you were drinking a PBR," and I'm like, "How do you guys know this stuff?"
That's awesome. So like, I have to imagine that was a decent opportunity for, because what department are you in? What's the name of
The Center for Mental Health and Wellbeing.
Yeah, so I have to imagine that was a pretty big opportunity to basically for them to leverage your memedom. Did they do that at all? Or is
Oh yeah,
that-
every single one up there is like, we're all introverts and you're an extrovert, Jim, so go do everything. So I get all the talking engagements and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Most of your colleagues are introverts?
That's what they tell me. They're all female too, but so they like send Jim out.
Are they functional extroverts though? I imagine just given that career, you'd have to be a little extroverted.
Well, not necessarily. Well, extrovert is in they can talk to another human being and they can pull information out and they can ask open-ended fact-finding questions, that kind of stuff. But getting up in front of a crowd or like teaching a class or things like that, yeah, they kind of shy away from that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'll teach a class. I'll stand in front of every freshman, sure. But
I still to this day get like stage fright
Do
on
you?
occasion, but it's so like random. It's like this Eye of Sauron will land on me on occasion, and I get like horrible stage fright.
Yeah, I get it. I get it like the start of every semester, like as I'm like prepping and all that stuff, and it would be class I've taught like 8 or 9 times, and I'm about to teach it again, and I'm like, dude, what if I just like suck this semester? Like, it could this could be the semester. Do you get that when you?
Well, I don't. It's more random, but we recently invited. One of the cool things about being an assistant professor in forestry is like we get rotating invitations where we can invite like somebody who another researcher from another university, and the department will pay for it. And so I've been slowly going down like icons in my field, and I study birds. And so one of them, Betty Lozelle, is this very famous tropical ornithologist. She's just retiring from University of Florida. An illustrious career, taught for decades, and she came in before the talk. She's like, Jared, I'm just so nervous. I'm so nervous. I'm like, really? I'm like, you have stage fright? She's like, to this day, I get horrible stage fright. And she's like, been doing it for decades.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's like it's pathological for some people, but for me, it seems like it's random. I almost think it's like, did I drink too much booze the night before and not sleep well enough, and then drink coffee, and there's a weird complex system that like manifests as me being super nervous. You know, I don't know what it is. But I've watched like YouTube videos, and some of the suggestions are stupid, but they really work. Like one is if you feel like anxiety, you're like, that's not anxiety. I'm happy. I'm like really excited to share this information with students. And you just tell yourself that repeatedly.
Yeah.
And it works. It takes the edge off. But yeah. Do you get stage fright being an extrovert?
The biggest stage fright I get is that I'm going to get up there and I'm going to say something stupid, or I'm going to like step over my words or something, or like the first class where it's like first impression, lasting impression kind of thing. And if I don't have it together, I've lost them for the semester. So as far as talking in front of people, I've been talking in front of people since that big. So
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I got really scared to. Oh. Been a while. I don't know.
I have a thing where like I lean into it, like you ever like make a mistake where you're teaching, like I make mistakes,
Yeah.
right. So like I think I talked about this like 2 episodes ago, but like I'll make a mistake and I'll be like, I'll look at my work and I'll be like, why don't you guys just talk crap about me for 2 minutes and let me figure this out and like draw even more attention to it. That might be a deflection technique. I don't know, but I suppose you could probably diagnose most of these things. Like
Sure.
what's actually going on.
Well, okay, anxiety, right? So the human body does the same thing, and people are in Michigan here, so I can use this for like the students and stuff. It's like, what happens to your body when a deer darts out in front of your car, right? Pupils dilate, heart starts beating faster, your blood pressure goes up, lungs breathe shallower, you get, adrenaline and stuff. Your liver dumps sugar so you can lift cars off small children and all that stuff. Well, it's the fight or flight. Your body reacts that way. It's the same thing with anxiety. And what once was adaptive for us to live has now become maladaptive with anxiety and things like that, where we can literally set that off just by thinking. And so, then going into techniques like that to be able to calm yourself and fool yourself into not perceiving it as a threat helps. Definitely helps out. So
yeah. Speaking of mental health stuff, what's the most common sort of case that you get coming through your office?
I have two.
Yeah.
And I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Jim, how do I make friends? Jim, my girlfriend just broke up with me. Those are the two biggest ones that I have
Really?
floating through the office. And, each one of those you deal with in a different way. If a guy, we all know tech's 31% female, right? Yeah. So there's not the pool. So it's like, dude, go to a party in Northern. But I don't actually say that to people because I don't want to get in trouble. But as far as...
wink, wink.
Stop, wink, wink. As far as, how do I make friends? It's sitting down with them and saying, okay, in order to make friends, you have to be in a social situation, right? So let's figure out what you're good at. Who did you talk to at K-Day? Were there any organizations that are, in your classroom, who sits in front of you, who sits behind you, who sits to your left, who sits to your right? And then going into like breaking the ice, give a compliment to someone, hey, those are really nice shoes. What's that person going to do, right? Law of reciprocity. They're going to turn around and they're going to say, hey, I like yours too. Now you've just established some kind of rapport, get their name, use their name over and over. So there's, a bunch of different techniques to just break the ice. And then if you have a commonality, you start talking about that kind of stuff. But.
Can I ask, I just had this realization last week. I was in California with my family. I won't talk about the circumstances that made me realize this. It might be a dumb kind of cliche realization, but for me it was somewhat profound. Like there's certain people I cannot connect with, right, and others I connect really easily with. And what I realized is I am so in my head and not my heart, like super analytical.
Right.
Like right now I'm analyzing why I can't get along with certain people. And like the people I can't like gel with are like all heart.
Right.
And like, does that make sense? Like people who are
engineers?
Yeah.
Versus social sciences people. So you got the black and white thinkers that are, it's all or nothing, and then you've got the feeling with the heart.
Right.
So the analytical, well, what if they do this? What if I say this? What if they do? Well, what if they say no? Okay, what if they do say no? Then go find someone else. But
I feel like people who come in with like a lot of heart, like this story you were telling about, like the meme and stuff, right, like there's some soulfulness and heartfulness to it. You're not like analyzing why the meme was good, why it was bad.
Right.
It's just like you're experiencing it in a soulful way. And I feel like probably a lot of scientists in STEM. Do you agree with that? Like I feel like I love our conversations because I'm in my head all the time.
Yeah.
And I even feel this is maybe like too much information, but I feel like there's downstream consequences of being in your head all the time. Mm-hmm. Like I realize like I very rarely call people my friend, or I'll say like I love you. It's very rare.
Right.
And I feel like those parameters are narrow. What I've told myself is those are the two most abused words in the English language. Okay. And I don't want to abuse them.
Right.
But I came to this conclusion that that's bullshit. That it's me being uncomfortable, being heartful and soulful, right, and so I restrict those.
Well,
to
what comes with being heartful? There's things that come with that. When you open up to another human being, there's things that come with that. And if you're closed off and you don't want that relationship, and you're analytical of what if someone leaves me and blah blah blah, go with that. Well, if you tell someone you love them, not a spouse, not a kid, what are the things now that you feel are your responsibilities?
Well, I think my gut reaction is I retreat into my head. which is interesting. Or I'll try to like look at it analytically.
Okay.
Like, why am I not like, if I'm going to tell Shane I love him, or Shane and I have a moment and I'm like, oh, I love you. I'll like retreat to my head and like get away from there. It's like a fearful place. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to think of like, where did that come about? And I think actually that might be a prerequisite to being a good scientist. This is probably bullshit. It's just I'm kind of spitballing here, but like, if you are happily living in your head, you're concocting hypotheses, you're observing, you're trying to explain that phenomena you observe. You're just conducting science. You're not doing it in a soulful way, a heartful way. It's a cold, analytical way.
To it.
Exactly. Exactly. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of engineers and scientists were like that way, just like living in their heads.
From what I see, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any downsides of living in your head for the majority of the time?
No, because you are going through every possible scenario and you have prepared for everything to happen, so you're either okay with what does happen, or you can hop back in and say, okay, that didn't work, let's try this.
Right.
So you're protecting yourself doing that.
Well,
Whereas someone who's emotional they're out there.
Yeah.
And, people can take advantage of that kind of stuff. But.
I also kind of think like the pitfall that you can fall into, because I'm that same way, like super analytical, what are the implications of me doing this or showing this emotion or things like that, is if you're around a person, there are some cases where the person you're around just wants you to feel with them and not fix their problems. Like
Yes,
I've had that with Sarah before, where she's like, I don't want you to try and fix everything, just feel with me right now. And so that's kind of been like a step back for me. Is like, okay, I mean, in some cases that's almost easier, right? Like I don't have to like think of those solutions. But yeah,
that's a male characteristic, I find.
You think so?
I think so, because that's happened to me a lot, and I've talked to other men who similarly say, like, if someone's venting to them or blowing off steam, you're like, well, how do we fix it? And you don't come to a resolution because the person really is just using you as a sounding board to blow off steam. And maybe it's correlated also with being like analytically minded, but
STEM, right? Males versus females in STEM, and that being a male, and yeah, part of it is our culture and what we're taught. We look at our parents to see how we act and blah blah blah. But yeah, I mean, we do. I'm grossly generalizing here. The females in our culture are the caregivers. They're the ones that give that emotion and things to the kids, and dad's over there going, rub some dirt in it, and well, you shouldn't have done that. This is what you do next time to prevent from doing that, right? Which, part of that's our culture, but then, yeah, part of it is innate, our temperament and all that we're born with can change over time, but yeah, and the STEM, tech only being 31% female, and engineering and mathematics and all that, yeah, I think that would definitely be, is it nature or nurtured? Were we born with it, or did we learn it? And it's a mixture of both, for sure, but I don't know.
I back to like the number one question that students come into your office with, like, how do I make friends? I wonder, and just I love your thoughts, like in my mind, back to like the heart versus head. Like, do you think a lot of those kids are like heartful people in a room full of analytical people, and they're not gelling, and they have to learn to be more heartful, or find
the kids are specifically asking questions?
Yeah.
I think they're head people in a bunch of rooms with other head people, and they just have a hard time.
They can't work out the math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can they learn the math, or are some people incapable?
Well, okay, so yeah, you can teach them techniques to do that. And, like I said about the compliment and things, there's all kinds of ways to establish rapport with another human being. It's just, the thing about trying to get them to do something is find other people that have similar interests to you that you can have a discussion with,
Yeah.
And that's where like the D&D club comes in, and that's where, pep band for sure. They have a commonality with other people, and so after they do break that ice, they can hold conversations.
I tell kids that same thing, like in the most freshman level class I teach, digital logic, in my intro lecture, I talk about my experience like starting out, and I went to SVSU. The electrical engineering program was much smaller. And
South Dakota State?
No, Saginaw Valley
Oh,
State
okay, it's
University.
SV. Okay, I thought I was going to call you a jackrabbit.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So, and I kind of went through that same thing where like, I didn't have a bunch of interest in the major because A, I wasn't engaging with it, and B, like I didn't have other friends that were doing it either. I was working in the chemistry lab, like preparing stuff for like the introductory labs and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I want to go to chemistry because I'm talking with friends that are doing it.
Right.
And then eventually I joined our formula team, and then I found my tribe, right? And so that's what I tell kids is like, you got to find your tribe in school. I feel like it's almost imperative, you know.
Otherwise, you're running around on your own.
But there's still that like
The one-man wolf pack, if you will, from Hangover.
there's still that like entrance into the tribe. You know, you might have found your tribe. Like I think I have my tribe, but they'll never let me in. You know?
Yeah.
And so like entrance into the tribe, this is as like, I can't believe it's like dawned on me so late in life. Like when I was trying to like converse with first impressions, I used to like dabble in like self-glorification, being like really like self-absorbed, like trying to show the tribe, like, look how great I am. I did this, I did that, you know, I've had all these great experiences. And then if you self-deprecate, if you tell a self-deprecating story, it like nails it every time, you know? And like
that's true.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. And like you'll notice if we're like socially hanging out, like almost 100% of my stories are self-deprecating, you know, because it's just like, I don't know what it is about the human psyche that is so much more palatable than someone sitting
shows
there.
a vulnerability.
And that's just like an attractive, like.
Yeah, so why do people want to be friends with vulnerable people, I guess, is the question.
Why people would want to be?
Yeah.
Well, who wants to be friends with a know-it-all? You know, who wants to be friends with someone that, you know, everything I do is perfect? Because now they're going to have to measure up to that person.
So there's like the hierarchy. It's like.
Oh, for sure. Well, every friend group, there's a hierarchy, right? There's someone that, well, maybe not everyone, but, you know, there's someone that kind of makes the calls in a group and other people look up to. And so, and when letting someone in, it's like, okay, we have a place for this type of person. Who is this, you know, coming in, whether they find them a threat or not, let them into the group. But I don't know. That's not my specialty. I'm just guessing.
I think a self-deprecating story too is like usually there's a punchline, and I'm like really bad at telling jokes, but I can tell a funny story about like, you know, how I screwed up with my wife or my kids or whatever,
Right.
and like there's a comedic effect which I think like that somehow elevates you in the hierarchy of social relationships.
Right.
Like, wow, this person's like funny.
Right.
You know, we like to be around them because they're humorous. So it like it adds to it. Yeah.
Jim, what does music mean to you?
I use music in all aspects of my life. It is something I grew up with. Well, my dad was a choir director in church when I was growing up, so we'd have to be there on Sunday night, Wednesday night, and we started learning how to transpose music and all that kind of stuff when I was little. Started taking piano lessons in 3rd grade, started playing trumpet in 5th grade. I was playing trumpet in the Green Bay Symphony Orchestra when I was in 8th grade, and I mean, I was John Philip Sousa band ward. Here I am bragging about everything.
No.
But I have a soundtrack to my life. Everything that I do, I got music going, you know, whether it's Benny Hill or, you know, I got something going on. But I've been in bands. I love to go see live music. Just went down to Milwaukee 3 weeks ago to meet my daughter from Illinois to see one of her favorite groups. And I mean, I just...
What band?
It was Knuckle Puck and Real Friends. They're pop punk kind of stuff. And
punky.
my oldest daughter was in English class at Illinois State with the guitarist for Knuckle Puck. So that's kind of where she was like, and then I took them to Warped Tour 5 years in a row, and just, I don't know, music has been, like I said, I got a soundtrack to my life. So.
Yeah, I almost literally have a soundtrack to my life because I'll make a playlist like every 2 months,
Right.
and so like I've got like September 2020, and I can go back to that and listen to that, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember like listening to this on this road trip, and so
Right.
that's been like super powerful to like have that like almost like a mix for like
Yeah, music evokes emotion.
Yeah.
And depending on, how fast the music is, beats per minute, and even if it's in a minor key, like back in the Middle Ages, they came up with this thing called a Picardy third, where they would play the entire song, symphony in a minor key, and what they felt was, because that was sad, if they ended it on that, everyone would go out and they'd be sad the rest of the week. So they created this key called Picardy third, where that very last note goes up to a major key and it resolves, and now all of a sudden everyone's happy and they can go back to work and everything. So, depending on what mood we're in, what we want to listen to, and that kind of stuff, music evokes emotion.
What do you know about the devil's chord? Isn't that a thing?
Devil's chord, I've heard the term.
It's something that's like the most like dissonant possible chord or something along those lines. Have you heard about that?
I've heard the name. I don't think I've ever researched, but I have something to do tonight now. So
Can you play it on the guitar?
I don't know it either, unfortunately. I'm not that smart. Yeah, I wish I did.
So what's the nature of the devil's chord? Like, what emotion does it evoke?
I think it just makes you uncomfortable. I think I can do like a Jamie pull it
well,
up.
and there's like different types of like discord and things like that you hear it and you're like, that's not quite right. That's not quite right. But in a major chord, it's like,
There's like a clear feeling.
yeah.
I'll see if
I used to play that in class for like dissonance and things like that. And we were talking about cognitive dissonance. And I'm like, what does that mean? I'm like, okay, your brain isn't quite happy with your the way your actions are. So I'd play them dissonance, like a dissonant chord. And I go, oh, okay. Because I get uncomfortable listening to it.
So I'm on YouTube and I'm just kind of looking it up. So it's actually the Devil's Interval, and I remember hearing about this, that it was actually, or maybe it was a myth. I'm not entirely sure. So this just disclaimer, I might be spreading misinformation, but apparently
Fine.
what I remember is that it was actually like banned like in the medieval era because it like actually like represented like the devil and dissonance and stuff like that. So I'm gonna play something and it might just be a guy talking, which kind of sucks. But let me see if I can find it real quick. Really good radio. Okay. Why don't you explain what you think about what's music mean to you, Jared? While I find this.
Well, I think it's like a drug. It's probably somewhat analogous to like a pharmaceutical. Like it can drive you one way or the other. But I sent Shane this. I used to have like in high school, my senior year, like a reggae show, and we had a little local radio station. So I got really into reggae, and I was never like a huge Peter Tosh fan. He's one of the original Wailers,
Right.
And I revisited his music, and I found this live show from LA, and there's this phenomenon that it elicited the same emotion that I get from some Townes Van Zandt songs.
Right.
And I'm not a musicologist. I don't know anything about music, but I felt like there's this interesting juxtaposition when you play really optimistic music, but the lyrics are depressing.
Right.
And Townes Van Zandt often did that. Like there's like this upbeat kind of like
Right.
uplifting angelical like guitar, but then the lyrics are kind of down. But that combination and that second song I sent you in that Peter Tosh live album is like about a guy who's it's such a cool song. I can't stop listening to it. It's like a guy sitting in the morning sun watching the birds go by. Oh, how he wishes he could fly. And then he's sitting in the afternoon sun wondering where his meal is going to come from because he's poor and all this stuff. And it's like kind of depressing, but the music behind it is uplifting, and that combination acts like an antidepressant. I don't know what it is. And in Townes Van Zandt, I don't know if this is years ago, I read his Wikipedia page, and I guess some people realize that about his music, that there's like an antidepressant quality to Townes Van Zandt, the juxtaposition of his like guitar playing and the lyrics. And I don't know, that's so fascinating to me. And so like that's so cool that can act like an antidepressant.
Right.
If you're feeling down, you put on a little Peter Tosh or a little Townes Van Zandt, it perks you up, So, did you like that album I sent you?
I mean, it was okay.
Was
Yeah,
okay?
I mean, I don't listen to a ton of reggae-ish stuff, but I talk about this to pretty much anyone that wants to talk about music. It's like when I was like early undergrad, I was like, I'm the Metallica kid, like, and like my personality was like borderline, like around.
Was
like,
it good Metallica or Black Album and later?
I was kind of all over. I mean,
Okay.
so I remember being like, I didn't like music for like a very large like part of my childhood, and then I found Reload, which is one of the Metallica albums, and I really like, so like the Fuel song, I really like stuck to that, and so I was kind of okay with anything Metallica was doing at the time, but yeah, it was like I took that through most of my undergrad and all the way kind of into grad school, and then like I realized like, so I play a little bit of guitar, and I realized that I really like the sound of synths, right? I really like something that has like some sustain and these notes that kind of like warble around and stuff like that. And then I would find some songs that were like more like pop songs that had that. And I remember disclaiming to my wife, saying like, I'm embarrassed but like the song, I kind of like it. And then I like started to think like, why am I embarrassed for liking these things? And it's really interesting because like it was that moment that like completely like opened the floodgates, and it's like, yeah, I'll listen to that. Yeah, I'll listen to that. And then I realized like how limiting it can be to be like, yeah, this is my genre right here, like just this. And like the more you're like, yeah, I'll give that a listen. I'll give that. And like, so that was one thing. And I've also like came to this realization. I don't know why. One of those things like, why did it take me so long to realize this? But like, I don't force music on people. It's just like, hey, you should listen to this. Oh, you don't like it? Oh, okay, I'm not offended. Whatever, because it is so subjective. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, part of it too, their upbringing, what their parents were listening to, what their friends were listening to, all that kind of stuff. If you're like an 18-hour car ride and your dad's listening to Elton John, you're gonna bob to Elton John, right? And that's gonna kind of stick with you some ways. But and then trying to listen to things new, and that's where getting to college where you're exposed to different kinds of music, you're exposed to different people that like different things, and you start opening up as far. That's what happened to me. So I was raised Southern Baptist, right? And so we didn't have a TV, we didn't have any of that stuff. And Dad, it was always choir music and all that, and the Christian bands at the time were really, really bad. Okay, Petra and Big Tent Revival and all that stuff, right? So I get to Illinois State, and I'm listening to the radio station, and Burning Inside by Ministry comes on. I'm like, that right there, that is me. And so I, getting out, getting away from home, coming to school, joining military service, whatever the case is, being exposed to different things and finding out, maybe there's something else that I like is, big.
It's exciting to find new music that you can like connect to. I love that feeling of like finally finding something. So
I still remember that right there. That's right. And I've seen him 15 times in concert now, and I'll see him again next year. But that right there was, that was life changing for me, literally life changing for me. Just listening one song on the radio.
Yeah.
But
I feel like you explained to me a moment that you had like that with like the Grateful Dead at one point.
Yeah, for sure. It is weird because like when you find music that you like, at least me personally, I have to fight this compulsion to share it with people. And then usually that's my wife, because she's also a professor here, so we spend a lot of time together. So she humors me, but I'm a huge punk rock fan too. And like, if I found some old like Descendant song like that, I'm like, listen to this song's amazing.
Milo Goes to College.
Exactly.
I'm the one.
And she's like, and I really fought the urge when I was chatting with Shane about like, I've just been like, I can't stop listening to this Peter Tosh album. Like, it's like going to church. Right. I feel, and Kristen, my wife, is literally like, oh, you're going to church, because she'll hear me in the bathroom like playing it. You're on that album again. I can't stop listening to it. It's so good. But that like, yeah, it's weird with the Grateful Dead, because it was like, I've heard obviously their hits, but I just didn't like them. I didn't like them. And I decided to sit down one day and listen to a live album. And it was a more modern live album. It was like from '91. It was before their second to last drummer died, who was really good, Brent Midland. And him and Jerry would just jive. They would you could see them like looking at each other, like smiling, like they were almost ignoring the rest of the band, like just with each other. So they had this magic. And there is this one song like Built to Last. And I was like, same thing. I was like, Jesus, it's like he's touching into something cosmic.
Right.
And there's like, and they zoom. I'm so glad they captured that show on film, because Jerry's not a very emotive person when he plays. He never has been. But like they zoom in, and it looks like he's jettisoning himself through the cosmos, just playing this music. And I was like, I get it. Like, holy shit. I understand why people are fanatical about this band. And then I spent a lot of time, I would do a lot of work in Latin America. Like, they never broken into Latin America, like a lot of other classic rock bands from the United States, even psychedelic bands. And so I did my graduate work in Costa Rica and Brazil, and I'd sit down with Brazilians, and it was wonderful music. I have loved Brazilian music, particularly rock and roll, like Howell Seixas. But I'm like, listen to this music. And they're like, we get it. I'm like, you clearly don't. Like, listen to this music.
I can tell by the looks on your face.
Yeah. No, we get it, Jared. We get it. But yeah, I really have to fight that compulsion to try to proselytize. When I have that moment, that aha moment, like I want to share it with people, you know?
Yeah.
And it's funny, it's so disappointing when they don't get it. It's like in a constant state of
And
disappointment.
it almost seems like the odds are against you. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I've found. Like if you want to share something like that really touched you with someone else, it's almost like you have to come on it organically in order for you to get that moment. You know what I'm saying?
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
It's like, not to be like spiritual, but it is like there's like vibrations in the music and vibrations in you, and they have to align.
Yeah.
And everyone's like vibes are like different, you know? And these change with time. It's fascinating. Like music that meant a lot to you as a kid, you listen to it now, and like that teenage angst is gone, and it doesn't speak to you the way it does. Yeah, it's remarkable. But yeah. But what was your big aha moment recently with music? A niche that you tapped into?
Oh man, that's a good question. My aha moment.
Clearly wasn't Peter Tosh.
No, sorry, it wasn't. Oh no. I'd have to look at some of my like playlists. I mean, the most recent one, and this is probably gonna sound a little cliche too, but like the most recent one I had was driving down the car 3 days ago, and I had so like Spotify does this thing where it like shows you like your like top 100 songs, and one of the on every December I just listen to that like playlist pretty much on like repeat, and the Edmund Fitzgerald came on, and have you heard?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Gordon Lightfoot's?
yeah, and like actually like paying attention to like some like the instrumentals and stuff like that. I was like, God, this song is really good, and I feel like it does like a good job encapsulating like the feeling, and that might have been like a chicken and the egg thing. Like I like heard the song before I was like in Lake Superior zone, but now it feels like Lake Superior to me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. There's a version on Spotify by the band Simon Bar Sinister of the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's like rock kind of thing, but
Yeah.
you should check that out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I had a friend when he died, Gordon Lightfoot. My buddy was like, "Oh, I'm really big Gordon Lightfoot fan," and sent me all this music, and none of it was the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Right.
And I was like, "Do you know his like this song?" And I sent it to him. He was like, "I've never heard that one before."
Oh, really?
Yeah, the only Gordon Lightfoot fan it was like unaware of that one song. But yeah.
Jim, you were in the military for a long time.
A
weren't you?
long time, yes.
What's
My
your
my military service can drink.
what's your reflection like on military service?
What branch were you in?
I was in the Army. 1988 to 2009.
Oh wow.
Well, most of the stuff I did sucked. It was a lot of physical labor. As a lower enlisted guy, you're not allowed to think, right? It's like, dude. And I had someone pulled me over one time. I'm telling them, why don't we do it this way? Okay, this way makes way more sense. You know, why don't we do it this way? They're like, okay, look, when you're sergeant grider, you can do what you think is best for you. But right now, I'm doing what I think is best for me. And that kind of clued me in. Okay, I need to be a good subordinate, blah, blah, blah. But then, you know, higher up in rank I go when I got to make the decisions. It continued to suck. And the only thing, the biggest thing with me was the people that I served with. That made it totally worth it. I still have friends. A friend out in Seattle, he comes out to the ski jumps in Iron Mountain every year, and We've got friends in Georgia, friends in Texas, friends down in, well, I've got some in Rockford, Illinois, Iowa, all that stuff. But it was those people that you're throwing in, when we're talking about situations where you make friends and, being thrown into a situation that sucks and you have to depend on each other to get through, that forms a bond really
I can
quick.
imagine, yeah.
And so those, like I said, those have lasted. I've known some of my friends I knew in 1990 that we still, we still talk and stuff. But most of the I was in the infantry, so it was all. I mean, let's walk 25 miles today. Hey, that sounds like fun, and I was a recruiter in Iron Mountain for 3 years, and that was the worst job I ever did. My success was not based on what I did; it was based on the decision of an 18-year-old kid whose mom's saying don't join, girlfriend saying let's go to college together, and friends say, oh no, why don't you come play football at Northern, because it's easy to play football at Northern. But anyway, I'm going to rip on Northern all day, by the way. It's like tier 2 high school in the UP. But it was the people. That's why I did it. After I got past like 12, 13 years, it was I'm going to stay in until I retire so I can get paid to wake up in the morning and stuff. And, my dad was encouraging me. He said the biggest mistake that he made was getting out before he hit 20 years. Mm. So I made sure to stay in long enough to be able to wake up and get a paycheck.
And so what's the connection, or if any, between military and what you're doing right now?
I worked with, get this, 18 to 24-year-olds, sure. Right? And so a lot of times I wound up being a case manager. We had to sit down with our soldiers. We had to counsel them every month. We had to use SMART goals. We had to, what is it you want to do? Even though, even if you want to get out of the Army, you want to go to college, what do you want to do? Had guys coming up, hey, Sergeant Grider, my lights got shut off last night. So you go into, all right, let's find where on post we can find you some money so you can get some money. You have guys coming in, we're getting ready to go out to do a 2-month-long field training exercise or something. He's like, hey, my wife's having complications with the pregnancy, so you hop into that. So I've been dealing with problems of 18 to 24-year-olds for a long, long time. And, now I just know ways to be able to help them out a little bit better.
Sure. So. What's the scariest fruit? We're gonna do a survey, and we'll each pick one fruit, and then we'll see, and we can put it on Spotify, and everyone else can vote. So, Jim, you go first. What's the scariest fruit?
Pomegranate.
Pomegranate?
Yeah.
Why is that? Because it's
you know how many different ways you can choke on that thing?
That's true. Yeah. If you were to just take a bite out of a pomegranate,
then you're down, and Heimlich and all that. So.
It's pomegranates are kind of alien fruit anyway. Like you crack it open, it's like
yeah. But that I'd say pomegranate.
Persimmon.
Persimmon?
Yeah.
I thought that was just a color.
Thought it was a tree.
No,
I've used persimmon driver before.
Persimmon?
You guys did not know this?
Oh no.
Yeah.
I did not.
I'm learning today.
Yeah.
What is it like?
They haunt my dreams.
Really?
No, it's just like it's a light orangey color, and it looks like it should be delicious, and I just can't. I don't like
No?
it. And they're pretty prolific out west where I grew up. So yeah. I don't really find fruit scary, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, think of a scary fruit.
Yeah, I mean, like a pineapple could be scary, like if you got like that lobbed at your head, like.
Well, a coconut, is that a fruit? No, it's more like a seed, I guess.
Is it? Yeah, it's a big ass seed, isn't it?
Yeah. Or a nut.
Well, I mean, the nut is in the name, I suppose.
Right.
Cocoa nut.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there we go. We'll check the Spotify survey in 1 year and see what everyone else thinks.
What's yours?
I think it's a pineapple.
Oh, okay.
Pineapples also look like an alien. Like this doesn't belong. It's like non-terrestrial.
So does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
I disagree too. What about
that? Is disgusting.
I don't like pineapple on pizza, but I'm like open to the chance like musical interest change.
You could try it out again.
Yeah. So the one that I just ran into, like in the last couple of weeks with a lady friend, pineapple and cottage cheese. Does it belong?
On pizza?
Cottage cheese.
No, pineapple in cottage cheese exclusively.
Oh, I was like, cheese. Yeah, I've eaten pineapple and cottage cheese.
Have
It's
you?
delicious.
Oh, that sounds gross.
No, the acidity of the pineapple and the creaminess of that's a no for me, dog.
Oh, they cut each other. It's like the creaminess of the cottage cheese cuts the acidic nature of the pineapple. It's like yin yang.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I want to tell you something about your reputation with other people. Well,
Mine?
no, it's a good thing.
Go on.
No, it's so it was another guest on this podcast. I was saying like, oh yeah, Jim said he might want to be on here, and so she had said that you said something that really stood out to her, that you don't like to call your former wife your ex-wife.
She's my former spouse. Yeah.
And that's like awesome. So
Yeah.
you have that.
She's
like,
way better person than I am.
yeah.
So I think that calling someone an ex is like me. And it
Yeah.
sounds, it's a bad connotation. It just sounds, gruff. So I call her my former spouse. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so that had stood out to that person. Like that was the thing that
All right.
indicated your character, I suppose.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, she's a far better person than I am.
that's awesome.
Good. And she's a great mother to kids. Still is. Still is a great
Yeah.
mother to our daughter. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, ex is weird, huh? Like excommunication, ex-wife. Like it does have like strong negative
Yeah.
connotations. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a great person. I hold no animosity towards her whatsoever.
Yeah.
Even after we got divorced, we go to high school football games watching our daughter and marching band and everything. People are like, aren't you guys divorced? We're like, yeah, but we're not assholes. Our kids down there marching. Why would
Yeah.
we not want to appreciate that?
Yeah,
If you don't
for
mind
sure.
me asking, how long were you guys married?
So we started dating in between our senior year of high school.
Wow.
I went to the Army. She went to college. Then she graduated from college and she worked at Disney World. I went to Germany. And then I went to Texas. And then we got married in 94 and divorced in 2014. So 20 years.
Is there one thing that's always like puzzled me about long-term marriages that get divorced is like, I would think like the codependency at that point would be so, irrespective of the problems, like the codependency would be so
Right.
strong. It would be like hard to like think of your life without like this person you've been with for so many years, even if you fell out of love with them.
One of the sayings that they have about retirement from the Army is twice the man, half the paycheck. So now all of a sudden you're forced to be with, instead of me going and playing Army and then having the honeymoon phase and all that coming back, that wasn't there anymore. And so, yeah, we discovered that we don't like each other as much as we thought we did.
So the codependency like didn't take full effect because you were traveling so much
Right.
for work.
Yeah, it was all over. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I get what you're saying, because like Sarah and I are high school sweethearts. Like I like we started dating right when I turned 16 and have been together, and it's like so interesting because like I feel like we had like enough like our brains weren't fully cooked, right, and so we literally like had a hand in each other's development as we were like raised, and so I think that contributes a lot to like what you're saying, that like codependency, like we know what each other's strengths are, and we also kind of grew, like our brains grew assuming like, okay, you'll do that part and I'll do that part type of thing.
Yeah.
So I totally get what you're saying there.
I mean, codependency is weird. Like, I have the worst dog in the world. It's like a shitty dog. It really is. She's deaf now. We got her from the Humane Society here, Copper Country, and like I remember getting her and being like, I can't believe how cheap this is. $50. I get this dog. Why would you go to a breeder? And we took her to the vet, and they're like, oh, her heart's about to go out. She has palpitations, so she's on like $150 a month worth of meds. That's not why she's a bad dog. She just doesn't listen.
Right.
She poops and pees in the house. She like attacks other dogs on site. Like all these things. And even despite all these issues of being a horrible dog and an expensive dog, like there's a codependency there. Like I'll be super sad, even though I kind of analytically want the dog to die.
Right.
You know, like just because it'll be like logistically way easier and it's not a good dog.
Yeah.
Like I'll be like, I kind of like rely on the dog at the same time, which
Yeah.
is weird, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's what. Now I feel like I'm batting like 50% of our episodes like talk about death on the podcast.
Oh,
but
sorry.
like no, it's okay. But yeah, I like look at like our pets. We have 3 cats and 1 dog, and I'm like, yeah, dude, like one of these animals is like gonna teach my 3-year-old daughter about death. Like it's like inevitable. Like, and and maybe that's just a me thing. Like I gravitate toward like talking about death a lot, and so like I find myself constantly, and this is probably, maybe you can tell me, Jim, if this is bad for me to do to my daughter, but like I tell her what death is a lot. Like I'm like, you're gonna go to sleep and you're not gonna wake up and you're not gonna see grandma and pa anymore. And just
Jeez.
like,
You tell Hazel this?
I do, like when she's.
I'm not judging. I'm just like.
No, well, so like when there's like an event, like we had that happen at the bike race at one point when they were like on like the side of the cliff and they're like both looking over and they want to throw stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And like events like that, I'd be like, Hazel, don't get so close to that because if you fall, you could die. Do you know what dying means?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know.
I think exposure to it, but yeah, don't dwell on it.
Yeah.
Don't bring it up every occasion you
Gotcha.
can.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah,
reel that
because
in.
yeah, at some point, either grandparent or aunt, uncle, neighbor, pet is gonna pass away, and that's where it'll kind of play out in front of her, and then you won't have to talk about it again because she's experienced
Lived
it.
it.
So,
Sure.
So
Yeah.
Lawrence, my 3-year-old, is I don't know if he's enamored with death, but he says die a lot. He's like, oh, if that happens, that'll die, and like he talks like that. It's kind of creepy, actually, but yeah. And I'm curious at that age, it's probably limited to they go to sleep and don't wake up, or they
Right,
disappear.
It's not until about age 12 where they're starting to be able those concepts, they're able to put pieces together and completely understand it. So,
But it's so funny because we fundamentally don't understand it. That's the greatest debate and question.
yeah,
Is
what happens when you die? We don't know. All
Exactly.
right, cool. So,
Yeah. Yeah, Lawrence is. I don't know why the 3-year-old. Why he's so fixated on that concept of going to sleep and not waking up or something bad.
Probably getting it
happening
from
and not waking
Hazel.
up.
They probably talk out on the playground and Hazel's explaining what death is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
It's probably the ultimate consequence because I feel like he walks through life like searching parameter space. He was at 1. I was like, Jesus, I thought this would happen at 16 where they would be that much of a contrarian or rebellion. But at 1, he'd pick up a rock and hit the window. We're like, Lawrence, we don't hit windows with rocks. And so he'll tap it, be like, Lawrence, we don't. And then he'll hold it in the air above the window. He's just searching parameter space of what is acceptable and what's not. And I think in the carrot and stick world of a 3-year-old, we'll take this toy away, natural consequence if you do this, this type of action, not share with your brother or whatever. But death is the ultimate stick, and I think that's why he's maybe in his 3-year-old brain fixated. Wow, if I fall down this hill, I'll go to sleep and not wake up. Wow, that's a bad punishment,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's what he's thinking about, but yeah.
Jim, I got another question for you.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the funniest thing you've ever encountered?
Oh, geez, there's a bunch of them.
That's a great question.
I know. Holy crap. My sister bought a Nissan Sentra, and it was a stick, and she had never driven a stick before, and she didn't want to test drive it. She just wanted to buy it.
Oh, God.
And then she got in the car driving it off the lot, trying to get it in first gear and go. And it just jerked all the way down the lane. And she wouldn't stop. She just kept jerking all the way down. So I think that is probably the hardest I laughed in my life.
Imagine, yeah. That's really funny. Do you have an answer to that question, Jared?
Oh man, I don't know. It's funny because I was about once every year or so, I'll get in a giggle fit, a hardcore giggle fit, But I remember the giggle fits, but the actual circumstances that led to the giggle fits are opaque. But I mean, there's certain things that stand out that are wow, that was really funny, But distilling it down to the most funny, it's hard. What's yours?
Well, every time you ask me the question, like you said, I have I remember the giggle fits, but I can usually remember the moments, and so and it's almost like a random number generator. And so you saying Giggle Fit reminded me of, so Hazel was like 1 year old, and just starting to like experiment with like foods and stuff like that. Had a French fry, and was dipping it in ketchup. She hadn't had ketchup before, but she was really fixated on like dipping it in there. Little kids would get like that. Just dip it, dip it, dip it, dip it, dip it. This big build up, and it was like that. Eat it, and the immediate like, and like, and I just remember just like completely losing my shit for like 2 minutes straight over it. But no, like another really funny thing I had happen. In high school, I did not partake, but I hung out with a lot of stoners. They were just to me it was like they were the most fun people to be around, and so I had this friend, and this was in the so this is in our government class, and we sat right in the front row, and so I don't know how we got away with this because like the teacher was like right there teaching. He must not have given a shit or something, but and at the time I was like dabbling with like wearing contacts, like just to like I was kind of like anti like glasses, like I didn't want people that type of thing, and so I had contacts in, and they were always irritating my eyes or something, and so so one popped out, and so I like took it out, and I'm just like looking at it, and my friend next to me, he's like, "Dude, is that your contact?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Let me put that on my eye. I've never worn them before." Right during class, and I'm like, "Okay." And so talking about whatever he's talking about, electoral college or something, and so he takes it, and he's like messing with it, and it came out of my eye because my eye was already dry and the contact was dry. And so my friend was like dinking with it, and I swear to God, like he like turned around and his eye was somehow like not able to focus, and so it like turns and looks at me, and he's like, "Dude, it hurts," and his eye was like completely red, and I'm like, yeah, so that's like one of my go-to funny things. Yeah.
I was thinking like one of the most like striking giggle fits I had was like it's hard. It's one of those things you would really have to have been there. But my dad was like getting up in age. He had me when he was like pretty old, and we used to love fishing on our boat. And the line got tied around the outboard engine, and so like we pulled it up. And I don't know why I didn't untangle the line from the propeller, but he did. And you like lock the engine so it doesn't like flip forward. But he's like over there, this like he's like a 70-year-old man, like untangling it, and then the little thing flipped, but it was like a 200 horsepower engine. It was a very strong engine, big, heavy, and it like shot him like a catapult, like through the air, and this like old man like splash in the water, and we're just like dying laughing. It was like the funniest thing I ever saw. Yeah.
So, Jim, what if you could use this as a platform to say something to all the students, like maybe almost an off-the-record thing? What would you say to like all the students?
Don't be a dick.
That's a good one.
It's my motto.
Yeah.
Don't be a dick.
I'm curious to know like what is the dick to not dick ratio of tech students? Like I'm saying like what percentage? Because honestly, like I feel, at least from my interactions with my students, like most of my students that I interact with are like genuinely good people.
Right.
Yeah, and so and maybe you have a sense for like what that ratio is.
I'd be taking a stab in the dark, but I'd say maybe 25% are dicks.
Really? Okay.
But okay, remember, is it a nature versus nurture thing, right?
Sure.
Were they born a dick, or did they learn how to be a dick? And I would say it would lean heavily on the learn to be a dick, and this is, your agents of socialization, your parents that you watch, how are they? Your teachers in school, if you got a teacher that's a dick. Whereas, most everyone has that one teacher that stands out that like really, encourage them to do well, and you want to learn from that person. But I would say, yeah, maybe 25%.
What percent? I know this is a stab in the dark, but are like their natural selves are dicks, like they're born dicks?
10.
10%?
Yeah,
That's
I'd say
a lot,
10.
Though.
Well, okay, out of 7,000, so there's 700 dicks running around Michigan Tech, right?
Okay. Yeah, well, that's good to know. That's good to know about that ratio.
Do you think those people's like journey in life is harder than a non-dick?
They can make it harder for sure. It's harder to make friends. It's harder, especially if they're black and white thinking dick, right? So it's a lot harder to make friends. Then they start wondering why they don't, and then they're, it's them against the world, and it turns, it's a perpetual, like, downward spiral. But I can say that they can be saved.
Do you think a prerequisite to being a natural dick is like being a sociopath? Not having empathy for
probably
others?
helps the predisposition.
Okay, so a sociopath isn't a diagnosis. It would be a personality disorder. Most personality disorders, you got a little bit of nature in there, but the majority of it is nurture because they are a dick. So the feedback that they get from other people and the interactions they have with other people
draws them
literally change them into narcissist. I'm only about myself. I'm out for myself. I could care about anyone. I don't care about your feelings. I don't even want to read the feelings on your face. I don't want none of that stuff. So narcissistic personality disorder would be, a little bit, they're born that way, but then the way they interact with other people reinforces all that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Not all, I know it's a generalization, but are like most personality disorders like thought of as environmentally induced, or?
They're 100% affected by the environment. When you're looking at the nature versus nurture issue, it would be more nurture. It would be the way that they were, because if they have, say, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective, major depressive disorder, they're going to interact with people differently. And they may be trying to protect themselves. You've got like, my brain just stopped working. Like borderline personality disorder. It could be someone who had been raped at some point, abused, that they're, it affects how they work with other people, and most of it, they have set that up, with their ego, they're protecting themselves. So a lot of that, majority, I would say, would be a nurture issue,
Wow.
So, go ahead.
I was gonna I battle in my head like which is not better necessarily, but like which is, would you rather have your being in your psychology and your identity like being determined by the environment or your genes? I feel like the environment is more depressing. Like the genes, at least there's like a pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You can overcome the environmental stimulus, but like the environment,
if you're talking negative environment, but there's also a huge amount of people with a positive environmental thing. You could have a severe mental illness, be in a positive environment, and that's going to, help you along quite a bit versus the, if you're in a negative environment. So here's the thing, right? Mental illness is, genetic. It comes down from generation to generation. So you have this perpetuation of negative environments that keeps going down generation to generation to generation. And if that's gone unchecked without medication, therapy, or getting, leaving a bad environment and coming to tech, because this is a good nurturing environment for people. First time away from trauma. I have kids coming to my office. I shouldn't say kids, students coming to my office that don't want to go home.
wow.
And, so both nature and nurture are important. You can overcome both of them, yes. The nature, medications, therapy, things like that. But the nurture part, being in a positive environment is gonna help you out. But how do some of these kids, students, whatever, escape from that bad environment where it's just being perpetuated? It's tough.
Yeah.
And I've seen clients like that. And it's like, move, just get out of here, hop on a Greyhound bus and go. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, I feel like I might have talked about this before too, but like, so Sarah, my wife, had been like in that environment, like, really bad parents and stuff like that. And just recently, like in the last like 4 months, like completely like called off contact with them, and like just like stopped and like not showing up for holidays just because like both her and I would get anxious about like having to like go over to their house and like hear them like just all the crappy stuff that they would talk about. And I feel like it's not something that Sarah has fully processed yet. Like once again, that like that even if she wasn't dependent, there was still that like commingling of like the way she like grew up with them like existing, and now like they for all intents don't exist anymore.
Well, she's still been conditioned, either operantly conditioned or classically conditioned, and she's learned a semi-permanent change in behavior based off experience, and it's still there until it she has changed it out with something else, and that takes a little while to do that.
For sure.
What I try to remind myself of like how everything is relative, so the small issues don't seem overwhelming, and I feel like I could be wrong, and I haven't talked directly with students about this, but just overhearing them when I'm like driving a van on a field trip, like this is last summer, there was some students, I wasn't engaging with them, I was just listening, and one of them was talking about how they had they're contemplating suicide because their calculus was so overwhelming, and I wanted to like shake them and be like, you can quit now and become an artist and do whatever you want. Like, what are you going to kill yourself over a math class? Like, I don't know if that's like a common theme, or if that's like, I feel like that's gotten like more overwhelming, the like lack of relativism, like your problem is relative to like other people's problems or problems you've had or will have, and this moment will pass. It seems like overwhelming to so many students, but it's just telling them that's not going to make a difference. I don't know.
Right, you can't just say don't think that way. It's where do they learn that? Where do they hear it? And I hate to throw out the social media thing, but that's definitely something that's out there, and where they're learning to think this way. But as far as, there are some people that have suicidal thoughts, just pop in there, and it's intrusive. They don't want it, but it keeps coming. So, you can work with that individual to, think about something else, get a plan for, changing it. But someone that says something like that, where this is the trigger for me to do that, you're right. Wait until, it doesn't all, take the test and see how that works out, right? But.
Well, I think like there's such a fixation on not failing for students. Like it's there's such a pressure to not have that happen. And I just find like, I tell my kids, and I think like 2 podcasts ago I was talking about this, like I tell my kids that I fail. Like I failed exams before, and I still turned out okay. Like it really is not the end of the world. Sometimes you can be better because of the fact that you failed. It's like you can bounce back. I know it's terrifying as it's happening, but like it really it's a footnote, you know.
Well, I tell students that they're worried about their GPA. I had one in there I talked to yesterday that checked her GPA calculator like 5 times before she came to see me, and I'm like, okay, look. See those pieces of paper I have on the wall here that has like a school name and my name on it? That right there says you could do it. You know what? I have never been asked in a job interview what my GPA was in school. And how, the only thing you need, like some scholarships, if you want to get into grad school, you got to have a certain GPA, but that's 3.2, So, but you can't just tell that's ingrained in them because their parents are like A's, and it's still here at school. So, and tech is different than their high school. So.
I wonder if axiomatically, like some people believe that they are in control of their environment and others don't. And this gets back. You remember this book called Grit? It was popular, I think, in the like early 2000s.
I think I own it.
Yeah, it's by Duckworth. Her first name escapes me. But she was like a MacArthur Genius Fellow, and she talked about, she summarized, grit is like basically being like resilient in the face of adversity. And this one chapter summarized some of the research, the experimental research I don't think you could do nowadays, where it's either dogs or monkeys, but one group of, we'll just say monkeys, I forget what the group was, they had them in a room where they would shock them randomly, and they couldn't control when the shock would come or go. And the others, there was a puzzle, and if they solved the puzzle, they could stop the shock. So one was not in control of the environment, and the other was. And then they took them out and had them like complete puzzles, and the ones that believed that they could control the environment were super resilient, like very cognitively with it, and those that thought they were not in control of the environment were like depressed. They couldn't like get out of bed to solve the puzzle.
It's called learned helplessness, and works off what the hell's that guy's name? Positive psychology, and yeah, if you believe you can't do something, you can.
Do it. Yeah.
If you believe you can, you can. And what kind of environment are people growing up with? So yeah, Martin Seligman, that's the guy's name. Positive psychology talks about learned helplessness. You just learn to give up.
The young lady talking about calculus, that's the feeling I got from her. It was like, I'm helpless. I am not in control of my environment.
Right.
And
so how do you teach someone they are? How do you teach her?
I don't.
You know,
Well,
That's a good question.
I mean, I don't do it as much as I used to, and I should probably get back to it. But like, one of the things I would do is like even just assignments. The more you can tell them what to expect, the more it helps them have reasonable expectations. Because like some kids will procrastinate on a project because they think it's going to take forever.
Right.
And procrastination doesn't help that. But and so I've found like little things like just saying like, historically, this has taken students 2 hours to do. And just like putting that like frame of like, this is how long it's going to take, or this is how difficult it's going to be, or just to like actually prepare them and have like less ambiguity.
Right.
So like I know like when I do my exam reviews, like there are some classes where I say literally what the questions are going to be. As long as you can do these questions, like, and they're gonna be different flavors. But I think like I think that some professors like to like keep it such a big mystery what's going to be on the test, so you're studying everything, and I think that's just damaging kids. I don't know, something, right? And so I think like having really straightforward expectations about what's going to happen can just help students be a little bit more confident, because at least they can control what they're adding. You know, they can control their self to get to that level. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Does
I
that make
do.
any sense?
No, they're more in control of their environment. If they have like, here's the 100 things you have to be familiar with, even if it's a long list, like this is something that I can sink my teeth into.
Yeah, that open-ended stuff, that's more terrifying.
Right.
Because you don't know what you don't know.
I think there's a deeper, and this is, how are we doing on time?
We should probably, you can finish your thought.
I was just wondering if there's like a deeper issue with like, and I don't want to fall into that trap of like always blaming the younger generation.
Oh,
you
it's
know?
easy to do.
It is easy to do.
Because I'm old, I can do that. So.
Well, there's this English style book I read that the first chapter is really great, where it's like goes back to like old English, and it's someone's essay about complaining about they're ruining English, and it was like the fast forward 100 years, the president was the same essay, like you're ruining English as the language is evolving. And I feel like it's just a compulsion or pathology for us to be like, the next generation is ruining it. But I wonder if there is some truth that I feel like more and more younger people don't feel like they're in control of their environment, and that's like resulting in certain feelings of helplessness, you know? And I don't know how you at scale convince them that they are in control of their environment. I think it's almost
They
like
have to demonstrate it.
or more cultural, like the parents have to do it or something. I don't know.
Well, that's why I have a theory that the worst people in the world are bad parents. That's my theory. I mean, there are objectively like really bad people that aren't bad parents, but I like generally speaking, bad parents create bad people.
That's my biggest fear, is being a bad parent.
Yeah, I totally get
And the
that.
fact that you identify that means you're not.
You should have seen me last night.
Dangling a child by a leg over the,
I know. Me, my wife and I, we talk incessantly about like, you know, if we're like disciplining our 3-year-old, we always debrief, you know, like, what did I do? Was that too strong? Was it too light? Should I have been more strong? You know, it's like,
Well,
but it's a moving target.
Do you
It's
debrief
crazy.
to the child too? Let them know why they.
We do, but there's like this sweet spot I can feel where like, if like, so our 3-year-old is lovely, is awesome. He skews strong-willed, and we don't want to have the house filled with like, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. No, because that becomes his identity. Like, I am the contrarian rebel. And so we're trying to do a lot of positive. So the point being is that like, that talking about it again, I feel like sometimes it's just we're wallowing in correction. Right? I don't want that to be his existence. I want it to be like 99.9% positive. But I feel like we're at like 98%. Like 2% of our time is like, don't do that. Don't do that, you know? Yeah. And he says that too. Like I'm probably reading way too into it, but in addition to being like things dying, his favorite game lately is like, I'm the bad guy. I'm the bad guy. And we're like, no, you're a good guy. He's like, but yeah, right now I'm a bad guy. Like, no. See where this goes.
Maybe it's that wolf gene that you were talking about.
Don't say that.
Yeah. Okay, so I should wrap things up. And so, as always, I have to ask Jim, what album do you recommend people listen to this week?
The Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste by Ministry.
Ooh.
1987.
What kind of music is that?
It's industrial metal.
Okay.
That's what Burning Inside came off of. That I was
gotcha.
like, ah! That was the first Ministry show I went to. And I got hooked.
And what's the name? The Mind?
The Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste.
Huh.
By Ministry.
Okay. I'm going to have to listen to it.
You should. Life changer. I don't want to force anything on you.
Yeah.
Let me know what you think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, I suppose, thank you so much, Jim and Jared, for coming back. So I think this is actually the last episode of the season. I figured it makes sense logically just to have like each semester be a season. And there's a few changes that I want to make going into next season. But so thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thanks for being locked in my office.
Sure, no problem.